Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our information session on emergency elementary remote learning for 2022-2023. We are at 6 o'clock, and just as people start to log in, we will be beginning our presentation. So this evening's presentation does have closed captioning available in a number of languages. The location of the setting depends on device. Usually it is in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. The Hamilton Wentworth District School Board acknowledges our presence on ancestral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee Confederacy land as determined by the Dish with One Spoon Treaty. The intent of this agreement is for all nations sharing this territory to do so responsibly, respectfully, and sustainably in perpetuity. We respect the long-standing relationships with the local Indigenous communities, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and the Six Nations of the Grand River. We always begin with our land acknowledgement to recognize the importance of the relationships of our treaties with local Indigenous populations. Tonight's presentation, a quick review of an agenda. We will begin with setting the context for remote learning in 22-23. We will provide some information regarding elementary remote learning from this year and the model of remote learning for next year. We will talk about parent survey, and we will talk about September 2022 startup. This evening, we will have a session format of a presentation and a chance to do question and answers through the live chat following the presentation. And we do have a parent guide and resource at the following website where you can find information. This presentation is also recorded and will be available at the link you used to access this meeting immediately following the presentation. We will also be recording questions that are asked and completing frequently asked questions that we will use to update our website in the coming days. So myself, I'd like to introduce, I am Simon Goodacre. I'm System Principal of Learning Services. One of the pieces in my portfolio is our elementary remote learning program. Joining me tonight is Superintendent of Program, Bill Torrens.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time, and I'm extending thanks on behalf of our Chair, Don Danko, and our Interim Director, John Bryant, and the rest of the Executive Council team, thanking you for coming out tonight to learn more about emergency remote learning in 2020-2023. Please feel free, as questions arise, to use the question and answer chat to put your questions in. As Simon has explained, we'll use that to address as many of the questions as we possibly can. We'll be taking to that work once the formal presentation is complete. So with that, I will turn things back to Simon. Thank you, Simon.
Okay, actually, Bill, before I let you go, if you would like to speak to the context of our e-learning program.
Yes, and my apologies. Yes, we are. Why are we embarking on emergency remote learning? We're doing so right now because we still continue to have an uncertain public health situation in terms of COVID-19. We've moved into remote learning as an entire board several times in the last 23 months. And since September of 2020, we've offered emergency remote learning for elementary students and secondary students, but for secondary it's been via our e-learning program, but for elementary students. We are at this point planning right now, really contingency planning, proactive planning, looking ahead that we may be asked by the Ministry of Education, the Ontario government, to once again offer emergency remote learning in 2022-23. So the work we're doing still has not been fully authorized or directed by the Ministry of Education. So it is contingent on the ministry directing us to do so. So I do want to make parents aware of that, certainly. Why are we doing it right now? in February. We're doing it because we're just about to embark in our organization and staffing processes for September 2022. That happens from March through until the end of June in various stages. So we're being proactive, as I said, to make sure that we have everything in place if we're required to have emergency remote learning in place. We know that it is absolutely it's an early time, and with that uncertain public health situation, that we may be in a really different situation by the time we get to June and then next September. But I think as our presentation will demonstrate, we are ready to move forward and provide some other options and choices for parents if that is the case. So again, Simon, I'll turn things back to you.
Thank you, Bill. So currently, for this year, 2021-22, we have approximately 2,000 students from kindergarten through grade 8 in our elementary remote learning program. These include students in both English and French language or French immersion classes, and those classes are staffed in our physical schools. So we have approximately 81 homerooms, and each one of those homerooms is located in a physical school across our system, and each school or class is staffed by a teacher within that school as well. So we are looking at, as Bill mentioned, the continuation of our remote learning program in this format through 2022-23. It is contingent on government direction. We will be following the same model. So the model that we have for elementary remote learning is a dual track model. This is similar to the way that we offer French immersion programming in the board. There are some important pieces to emphasize, and if you are a parent of a current remote student, this will be very familiar for you. Our classes are hosted at our physical schools across the board, and the locations of those schools vary by grade. And students who register in remote learning become fully registered students of the school hosting the remote learning class. So that does mean that students entering remote learning are no longer students of their local home catchment school. They are registered students at the school hosting the remote learning class. And this is important because all the supports regarding learning resource support for IEPs, English as a second language support, they're provided by that school hosting the class. And the teacher and the principal of the school hosting the class are your primary contacts, similar to a class that is offered in person. So other than the switch between in-person to remote, in terms of delivery, we would like the experience of students and parents in terms of contacting a school to be as similar to an in-person school experience as possible. It is important as well to note that the elementary remote learning program in the HWDSB is not a hybrid learning model. So a remote class is taught by a teacher specifically designated for that remote learning class. And depending on the school, remote classes are encouraged to be part of the school community for assemblies and clubs that can be handled virtually or digitally as students are spread out across the board. We do have some excellent examples of our remote learning classes this year being involved in some school-wide spirit activities, which is great to see. So that is our model of how remote learning will be delivered this year, and with it being similar to this year, sorry, we do hope that does allow parents to have some consistency in delivery of the model. And starting tomorrow, we are opening the parent portal for a survey, open from this Thursday, February 17th, for 1 week through to Thursday, February 24th, closing late in the evening at midnight. And if you have difficulty accessing the parent portal, you can have your choice recorded by calling your child's current school. As Bill mentioned earlier, many people don't realize how early we plan our staffing for the upcoming school year, and we are entering into that process, which is why we do need some initial parent input this early. So students, when you select that parent portal survey, you would be registering your child for a remote learning class in September. So in our process of transitioning out of this school year into next school year, by selecting that form on the parent portal, your child would be registered in one of our remote learning classrooms. And it would be your child's registration would be switched to the school hosting that classroom, and it does likely mean a change in your current school. The only exception to that is if just by chance your catchment school happens to be hosting the remote learning class for the grade your child is in. And as Bill and I have mentioned tonight, we really do appreciate individually and as a board how early we are asking parents to make this decision. We know the situation is uncertain, but it is important for us to have this information as a starting point to help with our staffing process. We will have a confirmation survey at the end of August, the same as we did for this upcoming school year. We had asked parents earlier to confirm remote learning, and then we had a survey at the start of the school year. We will be doing the same for this upcoming school year. Now, that survey at the end of August will allow you to change between remote and in-person learning, but the change will take effect as part of our fall reorganization that occurs in early October. So it is important to be aware that when you select on the parent portal remote learning, if you then choose in-person learning at the survey at the end of August, your child would still be starting the year in the remote learning classroom and would switch to in-person learning as part of the reorganization. Other than our fall reorganization, the choice for remote learning would be for the full school year, and we would have no scheduled transition opportunities scheduled throughout the year. So those are some important overview pieces of the next step as we open our parent portal tomorrow. So at this point in time, we wanted to give anyone in attendance a chance. We will monitor the chat that you can submit a few specific questions. We may directly respond privately within the chat, but we will be online and be able to speak to some common questions if they come in. So at this point in time, I do encourage you, if you have questions, to enter them into the chat. I know one specific question that was submitted to the board today through email was around a registration for an incoming student in first year kindergarten. It's an excellent question. As students in first year kindergarten are not currently active registrations in our system, you can't utilize the parent portal. What we would ask you to do for that specific year is to register your child for in-person kindergarten. Congratulations, first year kindergarten is a big step. And then contact that school and let them know that you are interested in remote learning, and we will manually track those families. So very unusually for some of our sessions, we do not have questions coming through the chat around the program. I do hope that is because with the model being the same as this year, that parents are knowledgeable and comfortable with that model that we offer, and that Bill and I have been able to explain the process both in terms of the model of delivery and also in terms of the upcoming parent portal survey. A question around transition opportunities again. It would be, this is the chance to transition into remote learning. The survey in August would also allow students to switch from, say, an in-person choice to remote, but it is part of the reorganization. So if you were not part of the initial survey, you would then have to start the year in the choice of delivery that you have, whether remote or in person, and the switch would occur roughly 4 weeks into school at the beginning of October, and there would be no formal transition periods for return to in-person learning either. So our staffing and space in our physical schools is also impacted by our registrations for this program, and so when you choose remote learning, you should be prepared to be in remote learning for the full school year. I also see a question regarding high school. If you're interested in our secondary e-learning program, Bill briefly mentioned it at the beginning, is through our e-learning program. So if you are currently a grade 8 student and are looking for remote virtual courses for grade 9, actually currently your grade 9 option sheet is open through the Zello program, and all of our e-learning courses are available for you to select as a choice. Have a question regarding switching this school year. So right now there are no formal transitions in terms of switching. It is through exceptional circumstances only, and you should talk to the principal of the school currently hosting the remote classroom. But this year there is no more formal transitions for return to in-person learning or a switch to remote. It's through special circumstances only in unique situations.
And I will add, thank you, Simon, and I will add to families, we understand the concern about how early we are asking, and we, as we did last year, meaning last August and into September, we always look for ways to be flexible and meet individual family circumstances. Right now, this is our planning going forward. Again, we still have not received Ministry of Education direction to provide remote learning. So there may be changes in the future that we would need to communicate to any families who did choose remote learning through the parent portal in the next week, and then also have some flexible options available when we do get to August and September. And I do want to answer, there's, I'm just publishing in now, a question around review of mental health for kids in remote setting going into year 3. It's an excellent question. Certainly there are concerns around the overall impact of the various challenges that our students have faced over the last 2 years in through the pandemic and with remote learning. So remote learning it's an option that we provide to families. We've provided to families as an emergency option for families for whatever reason don't feel like their child needs to or should be in in-person learning. And but as more evidence comes forward in terms of the benefits, but also the drawbacks of remote learning, we will work to ensure that families are aware of that so they can make informed choices. So I see a question around mask mandates. Certainly we follow the direction of the Ministry of Education and our local public health units in terms of any sort of public health measures that we have within within our schools, and will continue to do so.
Thank you, Bill. Excellent question here, just regarding a family in remote learning right now and wanting to know about the transition back to in-person in September, and do you have to re-register? No, you do not. So if you are currently in our remote learning program and you want to return to in-person learning in September, all students will automatically default to your local home catchment elementary school and be transitioned automatically, unless you indicate interest in remote learning through this survey. So the default option is for students to return to their home school in person. You do not have to register to return in person for September. You do need to indicate your interest for remote learning in this survey if you would like to be part of the remote learning program. So hopefully that clarifies.
There's a question also, Simon, around if there's enough students or staff, will we have to reconsider the idea of remote learning? And certainly if there's no interest in remote learning and we're directed by the Ministry of Education to have it, then we'll make sure that it's available to a family that is interested in having it. Or if we're in a position where we're not directed to have it and have a very low enrollment, then we would be moving to close down that option and transition families back to in-person learning for next year.
I will just thank you for everyone for joining us this evening. Our new questions seem to have subsided, so I will give a 2-minute warning for new questions to come in, just so we make sure we can answer them. In the meantime, a question regarding the timing of the surveys. So while it does help us plan and try to ensure that classes are in place, on that, appreciating how early this is, if you do not complete the survey for remote learning now, and there is that August survey and you decide for remote learning, it would be then considered as part of our reorganization. So reorganization gives us an opportunity to adjust our staffing to meet student needs in terms of remote or in-person learning. But once that opportunity in end of August and with the switch in October happens, we do not have the ability to then shift our staff throughout the remainder of the school year. And it is important to note, though, that you're starting registration when you fill out that August survey, sorry. When you fill out the August survey, you will have about 4 weeks before you can make that transition. So your default registration would be for in-person learning. There would not be the ability to switch until the reorganization. So it looks like our final question here just has to do with that 4-week gap. This is where we do hope parents can try to make a decision. If you are concerned around the startup of the school year, my advice is to have a student default to remote learning and register them for the remote learning. Depending on numbers, we cannot guarantee that we will have the same supplementary material that we have up this year. We do try to plan that based on numbers, but unfortunately, we are also planning for uncertain times, and so it could not be a guarantee. If you are concerned about not starting in person, please consider selecting remote learning and then making the adjustment for reorganization. And if you do opt for remote learning in the parent portal this upcoming week, and then in August you ask to switch to in-person, it is a 4-week wait to the reorganization date. So the reorganization date, many of you may be familiar with in-school changes to class. It is our common date across all schools in the system where we can change our teachers and our staffing to meet student need. So if you do not fill out the survey in the coming week, you will be starting in person. If you do fill out the survey in the coming week, you will be starting in remote. The August survey allows you to a chance to readjust that choice, but there is a wait time until the reorganization period.
Simon, there's a really good question about how does moving from your home school to a new school for remote learning work? If you'd like to just explain the dual track model again, if you could, please.
Absolutely. So your home school that you're currently at in person would transfer your registration, very similar as if you moved homes. And you would then be registered in that new school and assigned to a class. And the classes are set up in our registration system, just the same as an in-person class. So if you were moved to a school and in a remote grade 4 class, it shows up in the registration just the same as an in-person grade 4 class, but we have those remote classes spread out across the system. So all the students in that grade have to register at that one school or that one class. And then at the end of the year, if there was a return to go in person, the school hosting the remote class would then send your registration back to your in-person school. And we do a lot of that work in the background. And centrally, we do have some board staff supporting schools in making sure that switch occurs. I see a few questions have just come in regarding numbers of students required to run the program. And Bill, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. This is uncharted territory for us as well. We are looking to do some planning in advance so that we can include it into our staffing process. And some of this will also depend on some of those government mandates that come through. So we don't have a firm cutoff for a minimum number of students. We are looking, though, to gauge parent interest so that we can do some planning to try to meet the needs of all our families and if they want remote learning. So if you are interested in remote learning as an option, it does really help our planning to have that voice from you recorded in the parent portal survey. And the survey is located on the parent portal. It will be going live tomorrow morning. It will be open for 1 week. But if you have problems accessing the parent portal, please phone your child's current school. They can record the choice directly for you. Okay, we still have a few questions coming in. One about learning materials. For remote learning, I think the nature of remote learning and the ability for the board to provide parents with a choice between remote learning and in-person learning, our virtual learning platforms are the tool that we have available for us to facilitate this learning, and this is related to current uncertainty regarding the pandemic, and it is something that Bill stated at the beginning is still considered an emergency or temporary option related to the pandemic. And digital tools are our current method that we use to meet that need. We do provide our teachers with access to digital resources that are often mirroring some of the physical resources that they have. And Bill, I think just on new questions here, we have one around French immersion catchments. I'm wondering if you could handle that one there.
Thank you, Simon. I've just seen that. So the question is, if you choose remote but want in-person in August, are you guaranteed a spot in your home catchment school, even if it's elementary French immersion? And so elementary, if you're in elementary French immersion, it is your home catchment school, and you would return there.
We have a question around just feedback on the current remote program. There is an email. I can put it in the announcements. You would receive it. But actually, if you the easiest one I can reach you right now, the info email for the school board, if you email that line, they will actually forward it to me, and I'll be able to receive that feedback.
I'm seeing a question, Simon, so it is really specific to one situation, but I'll generalize for it. A family's asking, how would a new student to high school next year with special needs be transferred to a new school? How would that work in remote? And so if that is a transition that you're considering right now, please do talk to your principal and learning resource teacher in your grade 8 classroom or your grade 8 school right now, and start to make your wishes for next year clear to them in secondary, because that will be work that the secondary school and the elementary school will do together to transition a student with any sort of special needs or requirements for additional services. There's someone, Simon, who missed the meeting at the start, so just wants to understand what will happen in August. So let's make sure I've got it right, and you can correct me this time if I've missed it. But we're asking parents to make a selection now, believing that the Ministry of Education will direct us to, again, need an emergency remote learning program next year. But we are providing an opportunity for families to change their minds, and this would be to all HWDSB families, but to change their minds and to indicate they want remote learning or not, and do that in August. That will help us then, as we did this year, when we reorganize elementary classrooms for the rest of the year at the end of September, early October. Then move your child into the correct classroom and program that you're looking for. So this is your first opportunity. This helps us project into how many classrooms we feel we will need. Then we, knowing that circumstances could be very much different in August, we do another survey at that point, because our only other opportunity to add classrooms or reorganize schools due to demand for remote or in-person learning is through September. So we will do a parent portal survey in August.
You answered it correctly, Bill. And I do see some questions regarding the parent portal. And if you are having trouble accessing the form, please contact your local school. The school office will be able to record your information directly in the parent portal for you. But the form, we don't actually see the parent portal view ourselves. We load the forms in slightly different views, so I'm uncertain to what tab it's under, but I believe it is under Forms, and it's called Elementary Remote 22-23.
So I mean, there's a question around how to provide feedback on the current program, and we really welcome feedback, and so I'll answer in two ways, or with two options here, and that you could take one or both of. One is certainly having a conversation with the school principal, making them aware of feedback of any nature is really important. If there's something that you feel strongly is really working well, or something that perhaps you have questions about, letting the school principal know if the teacher's not already aware. Certainly we always ask parents to provide feedback to the teacher first in terms of what's working and what there are anything there's questions around. The principal is next after that point. But Simon and I are always open to parent feedback, and if you simply address an email to info@hwdsb.on.ca with remote learning as its title, or words to that effect, Simon and I will receive it, and we'll enjoy receiving it from you, and certainly you would get a response from one of the two of us acknowledging receipt and providing any follow-up that we possibly can.
Okay, even though I gave the 2-minute warning a little while ago, we've had some good questions come in, but questions have seemed to slow down again. Bill and I have enjoyed everybody who has logged in tonight, so thank you very much. What we will do is, it doesn't seem like we have very many new questions, so what we will do is stop presenting, keep the chat open for a few minutes after, and we will close it down as soon as we have responded to the questions that are there. We do update our frequently asked questions on the website with any themes that have come up tonight that have not been covered. And a reminder, if you do have problems with the parent portal, your local school can record that choice for you as well.
Yeah, and I'll add my thanks. And I know there continues to be questions around the overall process. It's February, September is many months from now. We are asking you to please indicate your choice now. We will again have an opportunity to do that in August if you've changed your mind. Certainly my recommendation for families is to really make a choice based on where you see your child learning next year, and where you think would be the best place for them to learn next year. And certainly if there's ways that we can be slightly more flexible with our timelines in terms of what could happen in September, we will do that. We don't want students not to be learning through the month of September or not in the program they want. But right now we do need to confirm that our formal timelines are working within that reorganization timelines that we've shared in terms of a survey in August, followed by a transition in late September, early October from if you've changed your mind from what would be selected now. The vast majority of parents in the HWDSB will, as they are right now, will choose in-person learning, and then therefore not participate in the survey for the next week. But those of you who think this is an option for your child or children next year, you may want to make that choice now, but you will have that option in September. The caveat, though, the warning that we need to make sure you're aware of is if the Ministry of Education informs school boards they do not want us to offer remote learning, then we will have to transition your children back to their home in-person school for the start of September.
And with that, everyone, Bill and I would like to say good night. And again, that info@email, if there are any further follow-ups that you need, is the best way to get in touch. And thank you for attending tonight. We hope we have been able to answer your questions. Take care and have a safe evening.
Good night.